So I'm doing it. I hope you're happy. This is your fault. You voted for this. So welcome, everyone, to another read-along where we sit on my couch with my bad hair and my acne, and what we do is we read a book, or I read a book, and I keep you up to date with what's happening in it, as well as telling hopefully humorous jokes, adding in hopefully humorous clips, and also kind of trying to be slightly educational, talking about what we, as authors, can learn from what other authors do well, or, let's be real, mostly do poorly. This is like MST3K, but for books, and probably not as funny.
Well, some movies inspire you to make your own movie. This one inspires me to make my own grade.
We all recently had a vote. My viewers picked The Program, which is a young adult book from, I think, like the early 2000s, when this kind of book was popular for a minute. I'm glad that we are kind of steering away from this now. Let's see, when did this come out? 2013. Still not far enough in the past for my taste for a book like this, but we're gonna find out. It is about teenagers and depression is a pandemic, and I just cannot get over this little bitty hand filled with little black pills. That just amplifies to me that this is going to be a book that is not going to be at all a healthy take on mental health. And I'm nervous about this one for a couple of reasons. One, I'm worried it's going to be boring, and we're just going to have to, like, try to just sit here and get through this, and nobody's going to want to watch it. And two, I am not a mental health expert, so I might put my foot directly into my mouth at some point, and that's an entire possibility. And then my viewers are going to have to be like, no, Julian, actually, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I do have mental health issues myself, but I am neither a therapist nor an expert of any kind. So I'm just going to be going into this as just a layman who has a few mental health issues themselves and knows a lot of people who have mental health issues. If I make fun of any of the characters in this book, though, I would like to encourage you to remember that these are made-up people. I would never say any of the jokes that I will probably say about these characters to a real-life person, because these people do not exist. They are fake, okay? This has been a lot of preamble, just because I don't want to start reading. My daughter, yes, I have a daughter, did kind of her own version of a read-along with this book, which is not quite as in-depth as mine, over on Twitch. I will try to link you if those videos are still available, so if you want, like, a sneak peek, a bit more of an overview of this disaster, you can check out what she's done. Part 1 is called Uncomfortably Numb, so I can tell we are off to such a good start. Mwah.
Hello, hello, is there anybody in there?
By the way, I have my own medication in the form of M&Ms. Right away, first paragraph, I'm already laughing. So I know from reading the back that depression is an epidemic in this world, I hope we find out a little bit more about the science of that and how that works and why that is. But our main character is in her classroom and it's up on the 3rd floor and she wishes that she could open a window, but they can't open windows in case anybody just decides to straight up just jump out a window in the middle of class. That's how severe this suicide epidemic is. We are jumping in with both feet. The main character is clearly already not like other girlsing. They're supposed to be doing some kind of test, and she doesn't want to do the test. She wants to learn about science. This test is about psychoanalyzing themselves. And then the girl she's talking to already is talking about something called quick death, which, because this is like The Happening, you know, where the pollen or whatever makes everybody murder-suicide all over the place.
What? No!
Quick death is a poison, you say? Wow, I never would have guessed with a name like Quick Death. So the girl that the main character is talking to is named Kendra, and Kendra has been acting depressed for close to a month, and so the main character is trying to stay away from her, because apparently depression is a catching disease, which means why would they put all the children together in a school? at all if they could catch depression from each other. But also, that's exactly what a person with depression needs, their friends and acquaintances to abandon and avoid them. That's key, really, to healing. Well, the men in their little white coats are here. I mean, I will say one thing for this book. It does not believe in any preamble. It is going straight in. But the men in the white coats are here to take someone away.
They're coming to take me away, haha. They're coming to take me away, ho ho.
The men in their white coats are taking Kendra, the girl who's been acting depressed for a month. You know, the girl over there is crying and our main character's like, don't draw attention to yourself and all of this. And I'm just like, what? None of this makes any sense. You get sad and then people come and take you away. See, here's the thing though. Teenagers have a lot of emotions. It's just a time in your life where your emotions are just doing whatever the fuck. Your emotions are like my hair, just doing whatever the fuck. So if we take away every teenager who cries, there aren't going to be any teenagers left. So Kendra's taken away in a very violent display where she's screaming and trying to avoid being taken, so whatever she's being taken for must be really, really bad. The adults are really blasé about it. Like, I get that depression is an epidemic that's happening to the kids. Why isn't it happening to adults? I have so many questions about this world, but I'm only in chapter 1, so maybe we'll get some explanations. Probably not, but maybe. But the adults aren't bothered by it either. I don't know what has happened to the adults that this doesn't bother them. They're just robots. Now, I can understand from the standpoint of a bit of wish fulfillment on the part of a teenage reader who just wants something to read where they can just feel sort of justified in feeling persecuted or feeling depressed all the time and feeling that adults do not care, whether that's true or not. That I can understand. Like, this book, I think, is one of those books that would be great to wallow in if you're a teen and you are just feeling like everything in the world is against you. When you listen to music like that sometimes where you just need a good wallow, I think that would be this book, because that doesn't need to make sense. You just want to think about how much your life sucks and nobody understands you and the teachers are just like all robots. They mop up the blood that Kendra, who was dragged away and left on the floor, and then the main character walks right in it, and I'm like, that's a slip hazard, bitch, be careful. I'm surprised that they didn't dry that up right away so no teenager could commit suicide by slipping and smashing their face on the desk. Alright, this is the explanation that we get so far. Teen suicide was declared a national epidemic, killing 1 in 3 teens nearly 4 years ago. It always existed before that, but seemingly overnight, handfuls of my peers were jumping off buildings, slitting their wrists. Strangely enough, the rate of incidents among adults stayed the same, adding to the mystery. The answer to this problem is to continue having everything as usual, school, everything, but like make sure that the windows are bolted. People blamed vaccines. Now that is accurate. And for some reason with this, people decided that rather than calling for psychologists once the children were deemed to be suicidal, the children are now violently dragged away. Obviously. And we get the first hint of this book's anti-therapy, anti-medication that I was predicting it was going to have. The program will mess with your mind, take your memories. You'll be force-fed pills and therapy until you don't know who you are anymore. Oh no, not medication and therapy. I don't know what the therapy is that can give you straight-up amnesia, but I think you're doing it wrong. And of course, again, we're talking teenage wallowing book here, talking about how they can't ever show their emotion at home. They always have to pretend to be happy. I'm sure lots of teens feel like that is the case, whether they're mentally ill or not, and mental illness is really common in your teenage years. Definitely, I'm sure a lot of teens feel like, my parents don't get it. I can never show them who I truly am. They can never understand how sad I really am inside. I don't believe this at all. The school cut sports when this issue started happening. Look, we won't cut sports for anything. Football must go on, or we as a nation will cease to exist, as we have learned from this current pandemic that we have been dealing with. She's gonna go see her boyfriend in what used to be the gymnasium. His name is James. Our main character is also sad because her brother, who was best friends with James, has already killed himself. And of course, in this world, you're not allowed to do normal, regular mourning of people who have died, because that means you're depressed and that means you need to be taken away. James's solution to thinking bad thoughts is to stop thinking. So, thanks, James. It's like those people who are like, oh, you're anxious? Don't be anxious. Wow. Thank you. This line. This is the worst. I don't know how I'm going to get through this book without just saying this is the worst. I don't know what caused Suzanne Young to have this idea, but it's the worst. So she and her boyfriend are parting ways after they have smooched and made themselves feel better with smoochery. He always knows what to say, how to make me feel normal. He told you to stop thinking, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have survived Brady's death without him. In fact, I know I wouldn't have. After all, suicide is contagious. Suzanne, why? Why did you think this was a good idea? And why the heck did the publishers agree? Alright, we're gonna probably go on to chapter 2 and just get 2 chapters out of the way to start us off for our day. They're not super long chapters. Let's just go, chapter 2. Turns out that James is good at forgery, so he can forge them like notes and slips for school. I don't know if this is ever gonna come up again, or if it's just so that she can be like, yeah, I came back late from kissing him, but it was okay because I had a forged note. The writing so far is sort of standard fare, graceless writing that you'd expect from a bottom tier YA book that was sort of like a shovelware kind of YA book that was just put out because this kind of thing was popular back then. There's all the things like my heart pounded in my chest. You guys know we've been over this a million times. In my chest is redundant. Where else would your heart pound? Things like Miller and I have been friends since the beginning of last year, sharing most of our classes together. Like, rather than letting us get to know these characters and their relationship through how they behave with each other, we're just told. And that's pretty par for the course for, like I said, this sort of bottom tier YA. So she's talking to her friend Miller, who we just exposited about, and he is talking about going to see someone, probably his girlfriend, probably at the institution, and be like, does she remember me? We're going to use comfortably numb in the paragraph as well. The author wants us to know that they're very clever. So I think he's going to go try to see his girlfriend who has been through the program at her new school. Which apparently just going to go see somebody can get you flagged, so I honestly don't think it's about depression or suicide. I just think it's like typical dystopian control the people stuff, and maybe we'll find that out later. So she's worried about crying in public. She's like, I can never cry. Never ever cry in public because they'll think you're depressed and take you away. By the way, I'd be great in this world because I just cannot cry in public even if I want to, so I'd have this nailed. But then her boyfriend says, I'll kill myself before they ever take me into that program. And I am shocked that he is not immediately tackled to the floor by more handlers. Because, like, surely you can't say, I'll kill myself in public. But no, he says this in the lunchroom and everybody's fine. But if she cries, she's getting shipped away. Our character assures us that she probably has depression too, but we haven't really gotten any of what that feels like for her, so it just seems like she's just mourning, as anyone would be when their brother dies. She talks about how she lets the dark thoughts take over, but the dark thoughts are worry that her boyfriend's going to be ripped away from her and sent to the bad place, and that's not a dark thought like depression. That's not. And maybe that's on purpose. I don't know. Maybe this book is trying to say that that it's not really an epidemic or something like that. That it's just an excuse for adults to drag kids away. But that's not like depression, girl. That's a perfectly reasonable fear for anyone to have. Anyone and everyone in this school is probably feeling the same way. And then we time jump straight to when they're enacting their plan. For some reason, because suicide is an epidemic, all of the buildings have been like transformed to be very sterile and white, and I don't really understand why that needs to be the case. Were people going to kill themselves by bashing their heads into a brick wall when it was brick colored, but now that it's white they won't? This also has a hint of the 13 Reasons Why shaming of survivors, where Lacey didn't commit suicide, but she was depressed, and so she had to be taken away. Well, depressed. And they are like, she was acting differently, but we didn't do anything about it because we were just hoping it would go away. And yeah, it's not healthy to blame yourself if someone you know or love commits suicide. I talk about it a bit more in my overview of 13 Reasons Why, whether it is ultimately a helpful book or a hurtful book. You can check that out if you want. I actually am fairly proud of that video, so go watch it. I wonder if there are people, there probably are, people who have real, serious, debilitating depression who might in real life be willing to go into something like the program, like understanding that it would wipe your memory, but also if it actually did completely eliminate your depression, would you do it, you know? It's an interesting thought. Of course, all of the characters are dragged away kicking and screaming. This character spends a lot of time not crying, but reminding us that she wants to be crying, but she can't allow herself to. Lacey had gotten her hands on a bottle of Quick Death. I don't know if we're ever going to be told what that actually is, other than it's a suicide drug. It's a poison. But there are lots of poisons in the world, so I don't know why she would need Quick Death specifically. She got her hands on some, and I'm just wondering if like maybe people should focus on making it less easy for kids to get their hands on a deadly poison. They have a notebook of Lacey's. That's like the only thing they have left, because when the program comes, they destroy all of your possessions as well. But they have a notepad of hers, and they talk about how her notes just dissolved into black spirals scratched into paper with the pen. And then they're like, how quickly depression had taken hold. Okay, the returners stay at this special school until graduation. I still think they could probably reintegrate with their families and friends. But now it's telling us that when they used to reintegrate them right away, the returners would just melt down, get overstimulated, and just like lie there. So I think perhaps something in between the two extremes that we have going on, of just kicking them straight back out into the world or making them stay in this special school until they're graduated. I think perhaps something in between there would be good, but not in this dystopian world. So the people who've been through the program are called returners, and everyone else is called normals? Yes, returners and normals. So James has forged a note from a Dr. Ryerson that says they're allowed to be loitering in the parking lot of the rehab school. And she says, Dr. Ryerson, who I'm sure not only doesn't exist, but is also untraceable. Well, yeah, he's untraceable. He doesn't exist, but by that virtue, could not these people look up Dr. Ryerson and be like, huh, that person doesn't exist. Like, in that way, he is traceable. Alright, so obviously their plan doesn't really work. He talks to Lacey, she doesn't remember him, they all leave. And it just ends with probably some foreshadowing where the main character is like, James is the best at hiding the pain, disguising the feelings. He knows what it takes to stay out of the program. He'll keep us safe. He promised. So I'm sure something's going to happen with James later. He probably won't be able to keep them safe, but we're on to chapter 3, and I'm going to stop reading because this is already kind of breaking my brain. Like, if you turn this book sideways and sort of peer at it with one eye slightly closed, you can imagine that it's trying to say things about society. But also, it is a 2013 young adult book written right around that time where 13 Reasons Why and all of those, like, mental illness is a fun, dramatic plot thing books were around. So I don't know, but I'm only on chapter 2, so we'll continue this shortly. We're back for at least one more chapter, possibly 2, of this disaster. We're going to join our exciting main cast as they go to the river and swim. I had the thought while I was at work today that I think the inspiration for this book probably came along when the author heard somewhere that when one person commits suicide, others are likely to follow. And they were like, what if suicide but epidemic? That's not how it works. It's not a communicable disease. It's just because, like, the way we're wired as humans, where if you are already really struggling with your mental health and considering suicide yourself, someone else doing it might push you to do it yourself. It is not because that person has somehow infected you with suicide. But, you know, that's how the world works in this book. Don't ask questions. It's like the pollen in The Happening. It's just happening.
Talking to a plastic plant. I'm still doing it.
This sentence is clunky. I'm sitting in the grass, the glittering sun making James's eyes that clear blue. That clear blue... what? I get that she's trying to say that the glittering sun is making his eyes look even more blue, but it's... the whole sentence is just poorly constructed. Our main character doesn't know how to swim. Is swimming also outlawed because you might drown yourself? And, like, these kids are totally getting away with something, and, like, maybe the boys learned how to swim before swimming became outlawed or something. By the way, Miller totally has "I'm a red shirt" written all over him. Their friend Miller, who went to go see his brainwashed girlfriend. This man, I feel like he's not long for this world. He is the third wheel to their perfect romance. Also, just to prove what a bad boy he is, her boyfriend James has the names of their friends who have committed suicide tattooed on his arm. So tattoos are okay, I guess, in this world. I don't know how old he is. I thought he might be a bit young for a tattoo, but maybe in this dystopian future you don't have to be 18 anymore. Maybe in other cities you don't have to be 18. Around here you do. We're reassured again that whatever happens, James and main character girl are just super in love and they'll always look out for each other. So Miller goes into the water and he's swimming around and he goes underwater and both of them are like, is he drowning himself? Like, if that was a concern, why did you go swimming? James is really big on repressing his emotions and avoidance. We'll see if that is actually something that he has to get past or what, but the main character girl is trying to talk to him about, you know, friends they've lost, and he keeps changing the subject to going camping. When did we get into the car? Okay, after they're like, our friend could be drowning himself, we immediately jump to the car, and I just missed it because I was too busy being like, if you're that worried about your friend, why did you take him swimming? But now she and her perfect boyfriend are driving home, and that's when she's like, I'm gonna cry, and he's like, don't cry, and it's too bad, she's gonna cry. And of course a big problem with this world, which may be intentional, is that the program is actually causing more anxiety, which is causing more kids to develop symptoms that could be mistaken for depression, which could get them taken away by the program. So it's a big cycle, and makes me wonder if it's intentional to just try to brainwash as many kids as possible. The two leads focus heavily on hiding any issues they might be having, on keeping it down, on only, like, she'll only cry when it's just him and her and they're way out in the middle of nowhere. And because in this world, therapy and medication are both evil, just hide it. Just keep your emotions hidden way down deep, kids. Stay away from those evil therapists and their darn medications. So they get home 2 hours late because they had to stop and cry, and then they had to wait until any evidence of the crying was gone. And her mother is waiting for her and, like, is a little bit panicky. And she's like, it's like my mom thought I was dead for only being 2 hours late. And I'm like, in this world, that is an actual fear. For all your mother knows, you and your boyfriend just took your car right off a cliff. So far, they have not gone to a single therapy session. They just keep faking that they are going to them with their paperwork and stuff. And now the mom's like, did you leave class early to go to therapy? So there are therapists, like, who are outside of the program, but I'm gonna guess that those people are evil as well, which is why our main character is avoiding them. Does the program monitor you in your own home? I'm curious. Do they, like, have cameras installed to be like, oh, you frowned, get out of here. But of course the main character keeps her sadness or any upsetness that she feels from her parents and just goes inside. We're on to chapter 4. I'm just going to keep reading. These chapters are fairly manageable. Again, this is kind of clunky. How was school? My father asks as I stab my pork chop while we sit at the dinner table. That's kind of a really, really boring way to set the scene, in my opinion. as I stab at my pork chop while we sit at the dinner table. Like, it doesn't even get its own sentence. It's part of the whole, how was school, my father asks, sentence. Could say something like, so how was school, my father asks that night at dinner, which means that we know that we're sitting at the dinner table. And then you could say, I stab morosely at my pork chop, or something. You know, like, give it a little bit of space. It doesn't need a lot. Just give it a little. So her parents are very concerned about her mental health, but common dinner time conversations are things like how the Northwest has the highest suicide rate in the nation. But, you know, parents in a YA book have to be inept, so... How scientist or doctor has claimed to have found a cure. Propaganda by the drug companies who have lost revenue from the banning of antidepressants. Why were antidepressants banned? I guess maybe we thought that they were causing this? I can't even remember. It was 2 chapters ago and I don't even remember. This book is all about similar length sentences, very choppy. I think it's trying to be like how teenagers think. But honestly, it's kind of just very visually boring to read. For some reason, it seems like the parents don't know that the program brainwashes kids and they come back without any memories. Like, how would they not know? Do they not talk to other parents? How would you not know this? Okay, she goes to the kitchen. She's like, I will take away the plates, because she's like about to be emotional again and she can't do that in front of her parents. So she's like, I'll do the dishes. So she grabs up their plates and she goes into the kitchen. But somehow she also sees a pamphlet for the program that's sitting next to the phone in the living room. And we don't say that she passes the living room and sees it, so I choose to believe that she is a multi-dimensional being and she is in both rooms at the same time. So then, to keep herself from crying, she self-harms. She's like, I'm going to cry, I can't do it in front of my parents, so I guess the only option that we have is to turn on the stove and burn my arm. It's genius. And of course she decides that she likes the pain, so I'm glad to see that we're also dealing with self-harm. I'm sure the author of this book will deal with it delicately and thoughtfully. So now she can cry because they will think she's crying because she burned the fuck out of her arm. They will not, however, question why, in the process of washing the dishes, she burned the fuck out of her arm. And then they don't immediately run her arm under cold water. What are these parents? Useless. And now her boyfriend is berating her for crying. Well, he's not. He's like, I should never have let you cry. Is crying like a drug here? Like, once you start crying, you're addicted to crying now? Because he's like, now that you've cried, you won't be able to stop. Also, we, as the reader, feel nothing for this brother. She's sad about it, but we just have to take her word for it because he was dead at the beginning of this book. I'm not even exactly sure how long he's been dead, but judging by her reaction, not a super long time. I don't know why the parents aren't showing any emotion, really. Like, they're concerned about her possibly doing the same thing as her brother, but they are not, like, emotional about the brother. Now, maybe they're keeping it all inside so as not to set her off. Normal grief is not allowed. You get shipped off even if you're just having normal grief, but, like, we, as the reader, have absolutely no attachment to this brother whatsoever. We've gotten really, like, no memories yet, no reason to mourn this brother. This writing is very amateur. It's slowly been dawning on me, like, just how graceless it is. And teenagers deserve better, quite frankly. And they lay in the bed together, talking about how they're just faking it. They're both so depressed, and they just keep faking it for each other. And it's like, okay, is the end game just turning 18? When you turn 18, do you just recover? I just don't understand what their end game is, because they say we have to fake it till we make it. But what are you making it to? They seem to think that continue to do nothing, and the problem will solve itself.
We've tried nothing, and we're all out of ideas.
Every interaction with her boyfriend is just like, ends with a moment of her being like, I can tell that he's really damaged, but he's staying strong for me. Just over and over and over again. His facade almost breaks, but he stays strong. Again and again and again. It's never gonna get old, I can tell you that much. This is what you wanted, so this is what we're reading. See you for the next chapter. Okay,
So I'm pretty sure you've seen lots of cool things in your life, but nothing nearly as cool as my patrons. Like Belle, Patrick, Anne Sophie, Callison, Ray, Artemis, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Irene, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Lisa, Sarah, Anna W, Anna C, Light Julie, OS, Hidden Glade, Persephone, Kit, and Lennox. Like, how could you possibly have seen anything as cool as that? You haven't.
We're just here to use the bathroom. And then we're just gonna leave. I hope that's okay.